Yeah, just on 10 to 8, National News Sport and Weather is on the way.
Breakfast. It's Tech Talk, Tech Talk, Tech Talk, Tech Talk, Tech Talk, Tech Talk, Tech Talk with Matthew Dixon.
Good morning.
Did you say to add a few extra in there?
Yeah.
It sounded like a few extra tech talks.
Well, it sounds very technical. I was really surprised last week, and I love playing that. So I'll hand over the reins next week to Richard, so he gets to play it again.
Sure.
Mate, we were just talking off air. I didn't know. You're a supporter of Tyler Everingham, who's debuting down at Mount Panorama, the young 19-year-old from Dubbo.
Yeah, and I've actually talked to him over the last few years just to see how he's been going. He's obviously been very keen and focused, which I love to see. People have got that ambition and drive, and so we're actually sponsoring him during Mount Panorama. We thought that's a pretty cool thing for a young Dubbo driver to be down there. So yeah, I'm going to duck down to Bathurst this afternoon, spend a bit of time with him in the pits and just have a bit of a look what's happening there. And then I think I'll probably get kicked out of the pits just before qualifying starts. I think they'll be a bit busy in there and they don't want me hanging around looking at things.
Pretty cool though for a 19-year-old. When I spoke with him the other day, like he's been, racing since 15, and I said to him, "Do you have a road license?" Well, he's got his green peas, but he's racing on Mount Panorama.
Right. I hope he keeps to a speed limit for his green peas.
Yes. I said to him, "Will you be doing the 40 kilometres per hour like I do when I go around the circuit with my mates?" I know it's a difficult course down there. Have you had an update on how he went yesterday around the circuit?
Yeah, I chatted to his mum yesterday actually, just organising for today, but I said, "How's he been going?" And he's about 3 seconds behind the leaders, and he isn't expecting to win, obviously. It's all about getting experience and continuing on the journey that he's on at the moment. But 3 seconds behind, it's a long track. It's about 6.13 kilometres, I think, from memory, Mount Panorama. And so it's a long track, and that's a fairly long lap time. So 3 seconds behind that, isn't too bad. And you see the scoreboard and you see EVE for Everingham down near the bottom, and that's fine. I mean, but just being out there on the mount, out racing, and I'm the same as you. I'll drive through sometimes Bathurst on the way to Sydney and say, "Kids, let's go for a quick lap of Mount Panorama." Not again, Dad. But you've got all these speed limits you've got to stick to.
And even at 40 kilometres per hour with the posted signs, I mean, some of those areas are really weird to get around because obviously we don't do it all the time, so you can really feel that. So we wish him well.
Coming down from the top of the mountain through the Dipper and some of those places, you can just imagine trying to do that flat out. It's pretty hectic.
I know. It gives you a new appreciation, doesn't it, for those drivers that can actually do that at high speed. So good on him. And of course, one of the youngest members of, and his team is young, his co-driver is 21, he's 19. So that's really young to be behind a V8.
It's pretty exciting.
Yeah. Let's move on because I'm wasting Tech Talk time.
Sure.
Some new launches from Apple coming out. Of course, the new iPhones, the MagSafe and HomePod Mini. These are all weird names, and I'm not an Apple fan at all. I don't own one. A few people in the building are. How do you find Apple?
Yeah, look, I think Apple have got certainly a very strong market position and they've got a very loyal following. In Australia, for example, they're about double the market share of Samsung. Worldwide, Apple's not number one, which often surprises people in Australia because they see Apple, they see friends with Apple, they've got an Apple, and so they're a bit surprised when they see those worldwide stats. In fact, there's 2 other manufacturers around the world that are ahead of Apple. But in Australia, we're certainly, and roughly stats here, I think Apple sits around about 62, 64% market share.
Yeah, right.
Samsung are in the low to mid-20s kind of thing. So, they're certainly very strong in Australia. The announcement, and it's not quite the same with COVID-19, the Apple announcements, they were complete events in themselves. They were bigger than a rock concert. Now with COVID-19, they're all pre-recorded, and of course there's no crowd there. So it's a little bit stiffer than you'd normally expect them to be, but they certainly throw a lot of pizzazz and a lot of effort into the production of it. So 4 new phones, you're spot on. So they'll come out. 2 are actually available next Friday, and then another 2 will be available on the 13th of November. But they've basically got a Mini, a 5.4 inch, which is a smaller Face ID phone than they've ever had before. They've got a standard 6.1 inch, which is like the iPhone 11 now. Then they've got 2 Pro models. They've got an iPhone 12 Pro, which replaces the 11 Pro, a little bit bigger screen, 6.1 inch. And then the biggest screen they've ever had on an iPhone, a 6.7 inch Max. And when you look at it, they're all 5G now, which is kind of catching up. Samsung, for example, had 5G last April. So and that's not April this year, sorry, that's April 2019.
Sure.
So they're catching up a little bit there. But also, the big competition now with phones is about the camera. That's what it's all about. So the cameras have improved. The Pro's got a 4 times optical range now. The Pro Max has got a 5 times optical range. But the computing power on the phone is what gives the cameras the ability to get such great photos from a tiny lens. So you've only got a small sensor, only got a small lens, but all that computing power behind it, which seems incredible. You think the lens will be all that matters.
Yeah, sure.
But the computing power, as an example, night mode on a modern phone, on the smartphones that we see now, what they do effectively, in very simple terms, is they'll take multiple shots at night to get more light in rather than just one snapshot.
Okay.
And then the computing power behind it will stitch those together into one shot, even though it's a human holding it, so the human's moving a little bit as they take the photo, they stitch that together to give one brighter photo. And I've sat there and shown people this. You take a photo in not complete darkness, but in low light, and you look at it with your eyes and you can see a certain amount. You look at it on the camera, it's brighter because the camera's been able to take multiple shots, get more light in, stitch it together into one photo, and then you've got the photo. So that's the sort of thing computing power can do for you.
That's excellent, isn't it? Because really, when you think about it, it's a big hardware in a small box, and that power that you're talking about, because it's probably even faster than some of the desktop computers that we even use here at work.
The raw processing power is the other things wrapped around it, the hard drive capabilities and the RAM, etc. on a desktop computer make it so that it can do more. But the raw computing power inside there, look, it's an old standard sort of line, but more powerful than the first computer that put man on the moon.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
it's an incredible amount of power, and then you see what you can do with that. So there's lots of cool things you can do with augmented reality and some of the games they're playing. But from a practical point of view, the camera, the photos are the main thing that people use it for.
Have they changed the way that they design the Apple products? Because obviously with a computer, for example, it was really restricted what you could do with the computer by upgrading, and you'd have to buy a new one as opposed to upgrading memory chips or something inside. Has that changed, or is it still the same?
It's not really, from an Apple perspective, it's really a closed ecosystem, so that the phone you buy is, you can't upgrade the memory in it, you can't change things on it. There'll be software upgrades that change some of the operation, but the main reason, one of the main reasons people upgrade, is that the software updates make older phones run slower because they put more features in, they add more things into it, so it becomes a bigger operating system, and the older phones start to struggle with the speed and the processing power.
Yeah, well, my Samsung, it's a Galaxy S5, pretty old, but it only has...
We need to talk to you, mate.
Yeah, that's right. And I've had that. That was the upgrade from the S2 and then the S1 I think I had. It's only got like 2 gigabytes of memory, I think. I have very limited apps on there, but it's like, it's been nagging me for the last 2 years where I just, flick and delete stuff because it's running out of room.
Yeah, and you've got limited apps because it's so old it won't run most of the modern apps.
I know. It's really annoying because I want to get the weather and the app just doesn't work for me.
Just to give you some context here, so you've got the Galaxy 5, the current model Galaxy is the 20. So,
jeez, I am really behind.
So you've got a bit of catching up to do there.
But do you find that with people that, because I'm happy with the way it works, except now I'm having these struggles when it nags me to say you're running out of storage space. And each time it does, like I've got Facebook. Facebook works on there, but it's very slow. Yep. But every time it does an update, because I move it to the memory card, because you can do that in this phone, luckily, to give me more room. But it keeps putting it back on the internal memory, and then it's like nagging me again. That's annoying.
Yeah, and there are a few drivers for people to upgrade. One of them is exactly what you're talking about. It gets a bit annoying, or you want to run a latest app that isn't available on there, or you've run out of memory. Yep. And some people want the latest features. There are new features that get introduced, like some of those night mode photos that I talked about. So some of those new features introduce drive it. So there's a range of reasons that people get driven to upgrade their phone. Yep. And some will just upgrade it every year regardless, but other people will go along until they have a need to do it. Interestingly enough, COVID-19 app, when it came out, which obviously didn't prove to be that successful as an app, but when it came out, we had a fair few people who walked into our shop to buy a new phone because their app wouldn't run on their old phone. So it was just too old. You had to have a certain version of the operating system, whether it be Android or Apple, and basically it wouldn't run on that. So that drove a few upgrades. So thanks very much, federal government, for some upgrades driven through that.
And I was going to say, because you talked about 5G, those phones just really, our infrastructure has to catch up with that telco-wise here in Australia, doesn't it really?
Yeah, and we're going okay with 5G. We've got 5G in Dubbo. We've got 5G in a fair few places around Australia. We weren't the first in the world, but we're certainly in the top 10 in the world getting 5G, and not just one little site. Some countries would have one site on, oh, look at that, we're the first with 5G, but you had to be in one spot with 1 square kilometre around that to be able to use it, whereas Australia's got a pretty good rollout. So yeah, we're certainly up there leading the way in 5G rollout.
For sure. Well, I'm running out of time, but I did want to mention that the other day I was using the Google Chrome browser to do some, updates here at work. That's what we run in the newsroom. And I noticed all of a sudden the cheeky little buggers have got a little ad down the bottom saying, don't forget to pick up or, click on the Google, what are they calling it? Nexus.
They've got two new models, the Google Pixel 5 and the Pixel 4a are two new models.
That's really cheeky of them. I thought that was a search engine. Is that against the law? Or?
It's not against the law, but this is what Microsoft got in trouble for many years ago. Some of the antitrust cases you may remember hearing about in America, they were made to break up their company because they had too much market power. And you could argue very easily that Google's doing exactly the same thing now. They've got incredible market penetration with their search engine. So there's a search engine, you go to that, thanks very much. And then Google says, we've got our own product. It's not an ad that comes up as a normal advertiser. I can't go and say to Google, can you put something on your home page, please, and advertise my product? But they're using that to advertise their own branded product. It's been incredibly unsuccessful, the Google range of phones. There are some people who love them, but some people, the market penetration of the Pixel has been very low. So they're actually using their power to try and get in there somewhere. And I think we're looking at the time to say...
We are, because the news is it. I can't wait for the news. I'm sorry that we didn't get to other products, but I really appreciate it. Back with Richard next week.
Excellent. Thanks for your time.
Matt, with our Tech Talk here at Turiu, it is news time. Don't go anywhere.